Well, the clue's in the name, really. An open access journal is one to which access is free and unrestricted, unlike perhaps a print journal where you have to go to a library or pay a lot of money for a subscription. I think there are two things, really, I think. One is the sheer cost of the standard journal in terms of a subscription. As an academic and as students, we don't see that because it comes as part of our work, and we don't see the enormous fees that the library pays to give us access to these journals. So cost is one of them. And again, the other one is about opening up work which is done by academics and normally communicated only within a small group of academics to a much wider audience. Because they are fundamentally an expensive thing to produce, particularly if we're talking about a print version. I mean, you have to have an editor who needs to be paid. You have to have all of the publishing house full of staff which needs to be paid. People must read the articles, correct them, then they must be put into a computer and typeset, and then ultimately printed and physically distributed to libraries. And every one of those steps in the process has a cost attached to it. I didn't know that, and it's surprising. But many things, inflation is an odd thing. Many things rise a great deal more than the cost of inflation. It makes you wonder what it is that's rising less than the cost of inflation, because you never seem to see those things. But it is a very expensive business, of course, and the expense doesn't stop there, because if you're a library, then you need shelf space, and shelf space costs money. I heard a talk from the librarian at Manchester. I think she said they had over 5 kilometres of shelf space, and it was growing at the rate of 1 kilometre a year currently. And so there is a huge issue with certainly with print journals, where very large costs are involved in both producing them, getting them into libraries, and then servicing the borrowing of them.
So do you think there is still space for print journals in the 21st century?
To be honest, I can't remember the last time that I physically looked at a print journal. Books are a different thing. I do occasionally go to the library and borrow books. But everything else now is online. Because of my interests in ICT and education, it outdates very quickly. So pretty much all the journals that I use are online. And why would you walk across the library when you have full online access? It also means I can keep a huge library of interesting journals on my pen drive, which I do. I have some hundreds of PDF journal articles on a pen drive, which I carry with me always. I think there might be two, and you might argue that neither of them are real. One argument against open access journals is that at the moment few of them have any reputation. And if you're an academic, to a certain extent, your reputation depends on the so-called impact factor of the journals you publish in. And therefore, the most prestigious journals are closed access. And in order to gain your reputation and to maintain your reputation, there is strong pressure on you to publish in a closed access journal. And so that's one of the reasons to argue against it. The other is that part of the issues about publication by this method is the process that is known as peer review, whereby you submit an article and it's sent to 4, 5, 6 people who are experts in your field, who then read it and decide whether it's of good enough quality or whether it needs revision before it's published, etc. And peer review is very, very important because it stops people getting away with publishing nonsense or rubbish. And again, peer review is an expensive process. It isn't solely confined to the closed access journals, but again, the most highly expert and prestigious reviewers work with the closed access journals. So in a sense, it's all about this bizarre and false way of measuring what it is that an academic does and how good they are at it. A lot of the debate around journals is actually about scientific journals. And in a scientific journal, you have a number of scientists who are attempting to communicate their current research to a group of people who are interested in that field of work. And so those people are using the journal to communicate directly with an audience which has a direct interest. Now, my interest is in education, and so if I publish something in a closed education journal, then we're in a position where it's read largely by other education academics, and arguably they're not my target audience. If you believe that I'm doing education research in order to improve the learning experiences of children, then the people that I want to be reading it are teachers. And I have to say that I know of no teachers whatsoever who read the academic literature. And one of the possible reasons is that they can't get into it. If they're not registered on a higher degree course at a university, then they simply cannot afford the cost of access to the journal. And so what my work is not being directly communicated to the people who are in the best position to make good use of it. And you might say that a strong argument for open access journals is that should teachers wish to do so, which is a slightly separate issue for debate, but should teachers wish to do so, then they will have access to them without the problem of absolutely prohibitive subscriptions. And I'm talking per journal some hundreds of pounds a year, which no teacher and no school is going to pay. There is a movement to general open access. I mean, the only way an open access journal can work is on the web. There is no way that an open access journal is ever going to be a print medium. And so much is going on the web, and there is a very strong movement, as you're probably aware, to put university courses online. There are at least 2 major consortia, headed by some of the most prestigious American universities, that are putting quite a lot of their course material online and giving people open access to that. And I think, in a sense, the existence of the internet is part of a whole movement towards open access in education.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions I need.
Oh, that was easy. Right. And don't think to cut that bit out. Okay, right,
Yeah,
good.
that was quite some